Bear in mind, since Jesus did command us to love our enemies and even pray for those who persecute us. But it does certainly mean not allowing such a person to influence the church. And in fact, at least at the time, calls for their expulsion. And in my opinion, we see Paul applying this teaching, and in my opinion, judging correctly, in 1 Corinthians 5, verse 5, where he's addressing a man sleeping in the Corinthian church with his father's wife. I imagine his stepmother. And Paul says, hand this man over to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, so that his spirit may be saved on the day of the Lord. In the early church, a brother or sister who sinned consistently without repentance would be cut off from the church. And this was seen as handing them over to Satan. And the idea was that they would be so tormented by missing out on the community where God's Spirit dwelt that they would be driven to repentance and ultimately saved on Judgment Day, on the day of the Lord. And so how do we distinguish between judging righteously, which I believe is shown by Paul in this case, and judging self-righteously? Well, for me, what it all comes down to is, and frankly what everything always comes down to, is, are we acting out of a place of unconditional agape love? When Paul called for the expulsion of the sexually immoral Corinthian, he did so out of love for the rest of the church, and also out of love for the man who he hoped would come to true repentance. When Jesus harshly rebukes the Pharisees, which he did on multiple occasions, he did so primarily out of love for the people who were watching, and not for his own ego. In Romans 13:8, Paul says, "For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law."